Do I want to be right or do I want to be rich?
I know when I first heard this, the thing that came to my mind was surrendering to the best way to do things. A salesperson who is set in their process and the way that they want to do things, but being able to surrender your ego to do things the best way.
Sometimes salespeople can be so set on how they do their process, and maybe the client wants to go in a different direction. Well, if the salesperson is so set that we've got to do the presentation, I got to take you through each page because my company says that I need to share with you each page of the presentation. The salesperson is yearning to be right. She lost out on the opportunity to be rich financially, rich with regards to that relationship.
Putting the ego ahead of the relationship.
I'd like to welcome all of you to the Wisdom of Wrench podcast, otherwise known as the WOW podcast. I'm Kevin Comerford, your host, and I'm joined in studio by the one and only Amanda Meyer.
That's me. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Amanda. We got a great show tonight. Great show today. Excited about it. We are talking about one of our culture episodes.
Yes.
Where we're going to be exploring a common service language. These are statements that we make that really help us understand and create and drive the culture throughout Wrench. Mm-hmm. Today's a biggie. And the common service language is this. Do I want to be right or do I want to be rich? Now, this shows up in many different areas of our life as we're going to explore.
Yes.
I know for me, it showed up when I was an inexperienced manager.
Shows up for me daily in my personal life.
Shows up for me with my children, especially as they get older and more like adults.
Yeah. And critical times as a manager, when you're really feet on the fire, it shows up too.
Yeah.
It shows up everywhere. So very big episode, guys.
It shows up when I have a team member that's leaving. Mm-hmm. It also shows up with clients.
Yes.
Now remember what the common service language is. Do I want to be right or do I want to be rich? So let's break that down a little bit.
Yes.
Before we started the episode, you said to me, I love this episode because we're going to be talking about, I think I totally get it. It's ego.
Yes.
And that's what really drives the right part.
Right. I love to be right. I am ashamed and not ashamed to admit it. I've always loved getting the right answer ever since maybe third grade in school. I was always I was a tryhard. So I've always had this really urge, this desire to be right. So I very much sympathize with that part.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it's a pretty natural instinct.
Very. I know I think anyone who's listening to this podcast, if you're in Wrench, you're probably fairly competitive. You have a bit of a competitive spirit. And part of that is getting it right, being first. That urge is very natural for a lot of us. Mm-hmm.
I relate it to holding on so tight to that desire to want to be right.
Self-conviction, right? You've convinced yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the other one.
Do I want to be rich?
Or do I want to be rich?
Can't I be both?
Well, the rich part is really important to understand because rich means rich in relationships. Rich in my own personal well-being, rich in my own health. Mm-hmm. And yes, as we're going to discover and uncover in the different areas, rich financially.
Okay, very well-rounded then in terms of rich.
Yes.
So do I want to be right or do I want to be rich? So let me ask this right out of the gate. Can you be both?
What a great question. I think the answer is yes. I think you have to understand what does right mean, though.
Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah.
I love it. Let's get into it.
Can I be both? That is something to ponder. Yeah.
It's all about the definition, right? What does right mean?
Yeah.
Is it being right or is it doing the right thing?
So let me let's talk about a couple of examples.
I love it. Let's go.
And one that I'm really familiar with was when I was an inexperienced manager. Okay. And maybe we'll answer your question through the course of the podcast. Can I be both?
Sure.
So let's ask that question at the end.
Okay.
Let's say I'm a new team member or new manager, inexperienced manager, and I have a team member that's leaving. And by the way, I've been dealing with this situation fairly recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been dealing with it because I had heard of a manager who treated that team member very poorly. They got mad. They got angry. It reminded me of a young Kevin, a 23, 24, 25-year-old Kevin as a manager.
Okay.
And they were so, they were mad. They were probably driven by fear. Like this team member is leaving. They're choosing to move on in their career. Manager wants to hold on to them so tight. How could you be leaving? Don't you realize that you're leaving and this is the best place for you to be? And how could you go to another company? All that I've provided for you, all that we've done for you.
Taking it personally.
Totally personally.
I hear it. That sounds like 23, 24-year-old me.
And Amanda, is all of that right? Like, do you think that manager might have done a lot for them?
Yeah.
Might have bent over backwards.
Right. Yes.
And so that manager can drive their stake in the ground and say, I did all this for you and you're still leaving. I'm going to be right. I'm going to die on the hill that says I'm right.
That says that you're leaving in spite of me.
Yes. And so what that manager does as that relationship in that situation unfolds is they completely blow up the relationship. That might have been, who knows, a 2, 3, 5, 7-year relationship.
Yeah. Get out. Don't come back.
Those were some of the words that were used.
You've burned this bridge, not me.
You realize if you leave, you won't be welcome back, were the words that were used.
Oof.
So that manager was right. That manager demanded, when I say they were right, they demanded to be right. And what they lost was that richness of the relationship.
And they were right in that person's not coming back.
100%.
Not great, though.
And likely that person, because they were there for, let's just say 5 years, they were probably a top performer.
Yeah.
That produced really well and probably afforded that manager quite a few bonuses.
Right.
That they got paid in order to be rich financially. But that manager was so set on being right. So they chose the right path versus the rich path. They blew up the relationship. They blew up the financial piece, the future financial piece that could have been there. And I say this because I did that. I did that quite a bit when I was younger, a young, inexperienced manager. And I don't know if you have any experience doing that.
I do. If I may, I know I became the call center manager right around 23, 24. And I had a couple of difficult terms. And what I realize now that I'm wizened is it was all about the narrative I was telling myself. And the longer I stewed on it, the longer I was coming up with reasons about why I was right, that it was an evil thing that they were leaving me, right? I'm continuously telling myself this story of they're leaving and they owe me loyalty and they owe me this and I've done all of these things for them and how dare they? I've gone above and beyond for them and we had such a great relationship. And the longer I'm stewing on it, the more and more I'm developing this narrative for myself that's going to tell me that I'm right to be mad that they're leaving and I'm right to tell them what's up when they leave. I am constantly building this narrative. And that's dangerous. That's ego. That's just impulse. It's human nature.
What it sounds like Amanda might have learned to do over the course of time is to better, because I don't think we ever get it perfect, right? We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But what it sounds like to me is Amanda got better at managing the story she tells herself in her own mind.
Yes. You said some very important words to me that I've probably said on this podcast, which is the words that you say are your truth, right? It doesn't matter if what you're saying is factually true. If those are the words that you believe, that's your truth. So I have to manage the story that I'm telling myself. That's where gratitude comes in a lot, right? When I'm identifying gratitude in a situation, I really have to manage that. There's a lot of discipline that goes into that because I'm a very emotional person.
Yeah.
I get spun up real quickly. I get excited really quickly.
Which we all are.
Yeah.
Which we and to me, that's your gift. That's your gift. And what I've learned for me, like you, emotional, my greatest strength is also my greatest weakness.
Yeah.
So recognizing that my greatest strength is that I get excited, I get emotional, I get pumped up, I'm fired up. At the same token, my greatest weakness is I get emotional. I could get frustrated. I could get mad, and just being aware of that.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a lot about how this whole podcast to me is just all about awareness.
Yeah. Self-awareness for sure.
Self-awareness. Yes. Yes. So that the rich part I had later in my career, as I matured, I had one of our top salespeople, Bob McKiley, leave. He got a job with another company that offered him what he thought was a better opportunity, and he had been with us for 10 years. And what I learned, because I'd made mistakes earlier, is that, hey, I need to treat Bob with dignity. I want this relationship to end with grace. I want Bob to know that I still love him. And so when he left, I asked him some questions, but I had a conversation with him.
Right.
And I asked him a ton of questions.
Just to learn and to, yeah.
So that's a biggie that I learned, which is to always, when I'm in that situation, is to manage my question to statement ratios. Ask a question rather than making a statement, because statements can hurt.
Can you give us a couple examples of like that conversation, what those questions sounded like?
Well, yeah, 100%. Because the old Kevin, the statement would have made, why would you go work at that company? Statement. You realize you're leaving us high and dry, Bob, right in the middle of summer? Or you're leaving us right in the summer? How could you do that? And that might be a question, but it's more of an accusatory question.
Right.
But it's the questions that I wanted to ask, which were non-accusatory, were things like, so Bob, what is it that you see at that other company that's super intriguing to you? And Kevin needed to spend a lot more time listening. Because there was a lot to learn. Maybe they were offering him something, and I could have learned something, which I did learn some things. they were a new company and they were growing, and he was leaving them because they were going to give him a lot more flexible hours. And so I was listening. Okay, we're going to be able to, he's going to get home at a certain time. So, maybe I needed to kind of process that, think, okay, what are the other team members thinking about the times they're getting home?
Mm-hmm.
So Bob left. About a year and a half later, Bob's calling me, wanting to come back. We had a great conversation. Again, I knew all of Bob's kids. I knew one of his daughters was about ready to go to San Diego. I think it was Mary was going to San Diego, and he was a little bit nervous about whether he'd be able to pay for her college education, working for this existing company. And so he wanted to come back. So we had a great conversation. I remember where I was. I was in the Foothill High School parking lot when Bob and I had that conversation. And lo and behold, 2 or 3 months later, Bob's back on board. Bob McKiley, by the way, became our top salesperson many, many years in a row, still working today at Service Champions. All because Kevin changed his mindset from wanting to be right. And I made the decision that I want to be rich. And remember, rich in relationships, rich in my own personal well-being.
Okay. So this is interesting. So managing emotion and managing ego. Now, I do want to talk about how this shows up daily, but I feel like I know when I first heard this, the thing that came to my mind was surrendering to the best way to do things. So talking about like a salesperson who is set in their process and the way that they want to do things, but being able to surrender your ego to do things the best way, surrender to the way that will lead you to more success. Do we find that there's emotion driven in that too? I know there's ego in there. Do you feel that there's emotion tied into that as well?
100%.
Yeah.
This whole concept was actually at my buddy Pace went to a Salesforce. He works at Salesforce.com. He was one of the early team members there, and he went to a sales training where he learned this concept. He brought it to me. And we've talked about this concept for years. We've used it with regards to our wives a lot. So we're gonna touch on that.
Sure.
Boy, oh boy, does it show up in my personal life.
Yeah.
But what it big time shows up when it comes to sales, because sometimes salespeople can be so set on how they do their process, and maybe the client wants to go in a different direction. Maybe they want to handle things out by the condenser and just talk out there. Well, if the salesperson is so set that we've got to do the presentation, I got to take you through each page because my company says that I need to share with you each page of the presentation. The salesperson is yearning to be right.
Right.
The client on the other end is like, oh, this guy's not getting any of my money. This guy and I are building no relationship.
Yeah.
So he lost out, or she lost out on the opportunity to be rich financially, rich with regards to that relationship.
Yeah. Putting the ego ahead of the relationship.
Yes.
That ties very nicely into how this shows up in our daily lives.
Yeah.
Tell us about your wife, Kevin. I feel like you got a story queued up for us. Tell me how this shows up in our personal relationships.
Gosh. Well, I got to give credit to my friend Pace, who shared this story with me. And it's, if I go, let's say I go on a business trip. And before I leave on the business trip, I put in the washing machine, right? I put in my laundry. I run the cycle, and it's time for me to head to the airport, and I run to the airport. And I come back 2 days later. And the laundry is still in the washing machine. Same laundry still in the washing machine. Okay? I have a choice. Do I want to be right or do I want to be rich? I can absolutely rerun that cycle, put in a new pod and run the cycle and everything will be great. Or I can go and give my wife a lot of crap and be like, how I went on a business trip. How could you not notice that my laundry was sitting there? And I mean, my gosh, I do all this. I go provide for our family.
You know what that sounds a lot like the victim mindset versus the ownership mindset, which is the narrative you can tell yourself can be the victim narrative, which is why didn't she check? Why didn't she switch it? Why not? Versus the, you know what, I should have been more proactive. I can do this myself. This is my fault. Everything's my fault, right? That's the phrase we like to use. Yes. The narrative that you tell yourself before you take the action.
Yeah. And I could put my stake in the ground wanting to be right. Like, how could you leave
She should have switched it.
How could you leave my laundry?
Yeah.
It's so easy. Now, Amanda, am I going to be rich in my relationship with my wife?
Oh, probably not.
No, exactly. I'm going to 100% be cold tonight.
You'd be sleeping on the couch.
I'll be sleeping by myself.
You'd be sleeping by the warmth of the dryer.
Yes.
As it's running.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So this shows up to me. It's funny because Pace and I again have had so many conversations about our relationships, and the first couple years of my relationship with my wife was rough because of me. I thought when I entered into my relationship with my wife was my project.
Oh, women love that.
Like, it's my job to fix my wife. She's gonna be my project. And boy, did I learn that if I wanted to keep that relationship, I needed to just chill out, let go. She's who she is. She is not my project. It's not my job to fix her.
Yeah. I control what I do.
Yes.
I control how I react.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was really good at tit for tat when our relationship started. Like, if I do this for you, I expect you to do this for me. And it was like there was like this T-chart making sure. It was like this T-chart making sure that, okay, I did all these things, and now are you going to do all these things?
I'm putting in 50% and you're putting in 50%.
Exactly.
Totally.
What I realized is it's all about 100-0. I need to give 100%. At least for my marriage. I need to give 100% expecting 0. Give 100% without expectation. Give 100%. I call it 100-0.
Yeah.
What I found, Amanda, is when I have that mindset where I give 100% and expect 0, what do you think my wife wants to eventually do?
Give 100%.
She wants to give.
Yeah.
But if I go in thinking it's going to be this 50-50 thing, if I do this, you're going to, and that's constantly something that I have to just manage.
Okay. A very fluid definition of being right, I think. Coming back to the question. Yeah.
Yes.
You know where I know where I see this show up in my daily life.
Tell me.
Road rage.
Ooh, okay.
I definitely used to have a lot of road rage.
Okay.
When you commute, anyone here who commutes, or if you sit in a truck all day, it can be very easy to get irritated at that person who doesn't use their blinker, or they're zipping in and out of the cars. They're zooming along into the carpool lane and then swerving in your lane really fast, and you're like, "There's only one person in that car, and you shouldn't be in the carpool lane." All about the narrative you tell yourself, right? It can be really easy to say, I'm right and they're wrong. And they're the ones that messed up and I'm furious. And it can just screw up your whole day if the right person just cuts you off, right? It can screw up your whole day.
And what is, when you say screwing up your whole day, what does that mean?
Oh my gosh. I can tell you, I used to commute from Tracy to Sunnyvale. For anyone who's not local to California or Bay Area, that was maybe like a 2-hour commute by car. I actually got my motorcycle license so that I could cut my commute in half, just for reference, right? So 2 hours in a car.
You're cool.
You know what? I am cool. Thank you.
You're cool. I can see you cruising along on a motorcycle.
Yeah. Then I was that annoying motorcyclist, but still, it could be that someone would cut me off while I'm still in Tracy at the beginning of my commute, and I would be annoyed and upset the whole 2 hours to Sunnyvale. And every single time someone made the smallest mistake on the road, it would just get worse and worse. So by the time I'm showing up to my job in Sunnyvale, I'm furious. I'm predispositioned to be mean to everybody that day. I am predispositioned to have every little mistake that people make, I'm getting more and more upset because I'm right and they're wrong. And why are you doing this to my day? Right? Road rage can really, if you let it, it'll get to you.
What a great example. Because that's letting go of being right.
Yeah.
Because they probably should have used their blinker.
Yeah.
Right?
Probably.
Letting go.
It's on there, folks. It's on your steering column.
Yeah. Letting go of being right. Letting go of holding on.
Yeah.
Because, by the way, man, do we even know what was going on inside that other car?
This is how I've changed the narrative for myself, which is I don't know what's happening in that car right now. That could be someone taking their kid to the hospital, right? That could be someone on the way to the hospital. That could be someone who is late for their job and they're worried about losing their job right now. I don't know what's going on with that person right now, right? They could have a kid in the back that's distracting them, and they're just trying to make sure that their baby stops crying. I don't know what's going on in that car. I have to be generous, right? I need to be allowing and understand that they're going to do what they're doing. I have to control how I react and what I do. That has definitely changed my road rage approach. I say it to my husband all the time. It drives him nuts, but I'm always like, we don't know where that person's going. We don't know what's going on with them right now. And I just say that and I let it sit, and it just makes things so much better.
That's so good. Because that relates back to what I was saying about the washing machine with my wife.
Yeah.
There's always extenuating circumstances that I'm aware of.
Right.
Unaware of.
Right.
Like, who knows what she's been dealing with over the last 2 days.
Right.
So what you're telling me when it comes to my wife is I need to listen more.
Yeah, Kevin.
I need to ask questions. I need to ask some questions before I just haul off and go right at her about how could you do this with the washing machine?
Right.
And my clothes in the washing machine. Because there's extenuating circumstances that I'm likely not aware of. And if I just had a conversation.
Yeah. You say, I want to get this right. One of the things that you tell me, I'm asking questions to seek understanding, not blame. Tell me, I probably screwed it up. Tell me exactly it's a different common service language, but it's very relative here.
It has to do with a team member or my wife. When I know I've got the right person in place, I never have to seek blame. There's no reason for me ever to seek blame. Always look to seek understanding.
Yes.
Like, maybe there's a reason that the person came in late this particular day. Rather than going blaming.
That narrative.
Yeah.
They're always late. Gosh, they can't just get out of bed early.
Yeah, if I know I've got the right person. Now, if I don't have the right person, if I don't believe that this person is a culture fit or is the right person for me, then that's a totally different situation.
Yes.
And you got to deal with that differently. If I know it is a good, great, top performer, Kevin, look to seek understanding, maybe why they behaved in that sort of way, or maybe why they took those actions versus seeking blame. Because there's always extenuating circumstances that I'm totally unaware of. So, Kevin, ask questions versus making statements. Boy, because I could make statements, and the statements can hurt. Ask questions, listen, and seek understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'll get spun up, right, telling myself that narrative, and I can be very mean. I find that the better you are with words, and a lot of you out there are great with your words, right? We talk to clients, we talk to team members all day. We're pretty good with our words. But the longer you stew on something, you can craft a pretty cruel message. I know I've burned some bridges in my past, right? Like texting mad is such a dangerous thing. Because you don't have to say it face to face. You've got time to craft like the perfectly worded message of how you're going to really tell that person what's up. And you
may be right. You may be right with that text message.
I might be. I probably didn't have to spend, for anyone out there who spent like 2 days crafting the perfect text message to really tell that person like what you think of them. It's such a dangerous tool texting can be. And I might be right, but I'm not rich in those relationships.
Yeah. What a great point. A little sidebar. Never send emails when you're mad.
Yeah.
Never send text messages
Stop.
when you're...
Put down the phone, guys. Put it down.
Yeah. and pick up the phone and call the person.
Yes.
Or better yet, meet with them face to face.
Talk to them. Yeah.
And ask questions. This also showed up for me pretty early on. There was a company that we were looking to purchase, and we were in the middle of due diligence. And one of the things that I learned in the process of due diligence was that they were going to court, small claims court, with 6 or 7 of their clients. They had arranged the docket, so it was the company versus Mr. Jones, the company versus Mrs. Smith, and I went.
Did you say 7? 6, 7?
6 or 7.
Okay.
Let's just
in a row.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Continue.
All set up on the same time. So they had it organized.
Okay.
So they didn't have to make multiple trips.
That already sounds exhausting. Continue.
Yes. I watched this owner of this company win a $400 judgment against this client. Win a $350 judgment against this client. Didn't lose a $800 judgment against this client. What I saw, though, was that owner's desire to be right.
For $400?
Yes.
Small claims court for $400.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. To burn a relationship over that. Go ahead. Yeah. That's so... Tell me, finish your story. I'm sorry.
No,
I don't want to cut you off.
His desire to be right was so extreme, and versus being rich in that relationship with that client. What do you think happened with those client relationships, Amanda?
Yeah, bridges burned.
Even though he won the judgment.
And they're going to talk bad things about that company to everybody they know.
It's no wonder that after 20 years, that company was still doing $2 million in revenue. 20 years of business. The ceiling that they kept bumping up against was because that owner wanted to be right.
Mm-hmm. I think that's ego coming back to what we talked about at the beginning. Because I know sometimes with client concerns, when you know that like we didn't do anything wrong, like the client misunderstood and they weren't listening and we sent them emails, and it can be really easy to get hung up in well, we are right. We are right. And it's ego of wanting to win that battle. And it's just the longer that goes on, right? The more that they are saying the whole process too, they're saying bad things about us and how difficult we are to work with. That can be so dangerous.
So getting that client challenge wrapped up quick, even if it means refunding.
Yeah.
Is so important, because client challenges, in my opinion, have always been like a bag of garbage.
The longer you let it sit.
The longer it sticks around, the more it starts to stink.
Oh, no.
And so handle it.
Yeah.
Take it out. Get it done. Put your ego aside, even though you might be right. Put your ego aside. Write it off. Get out.
Do you want to be right or do you want to be rich?
Yeah. Yeah. This also shows up with my children.
Mm-hmm.
And dad's desire to want to be right and make sure my kids are doing their chores. And dad can get a little bit hot when my son, for example, forgets to take out the garbage. And I can lay into him and, driving to be right. And you're supposed to do this. And what I have to remind myself is, wow, my desire to want to be right just kind of thrashed a little bit our relationship. Mm-hmm. Being rich in relationships. And oh, by the way, it also thrashed my desire to be rich in well-being, because after those interactions, there's a ton of guilt, ton of shame that I feel.
Yeah.
And if I lose sight or I can have my ego overshadow that shame. Of course he should have taken out the garbage. And even though I'm feeling that shame because of the way that I might have interacted with him.
Right.
But I was right, damn it. So
it's that narrative that you're telling yourself.
I can absolutely lose that. The ego can overshadow even that shame. So being aware of when I'm feeling that shame or that guilt of, man, did I really need to come across that strong? And I could have probably gotten it accomplished had I just changed my approach. So one thing I have done, Amanda, that with my kids is I am able to fall on my sword and say, Landon, I want you to take out the garbage, and, Dad gets frustrated at it. The way that I approached you yesterday, son, though, was wrong. And I apologize for that, because I came in kind of hot. And I feel like it just relieves everything when Dad falls on his sword.
Mm-hmm. That's so powerful. I mentioned earlier that I love to be right in school, and it's you sort of develop this idea going through, K through 12, that being right is going to give you credibility. But as an adult and with your relationships, admitting you're wrong is what gives you credibility.
Wow. So true. Admitting you're wrong gives you credibility. And does that apply to even your fellow team members?
Yes. I find that it does. I will get spun up. It happened a lot more when I was a young manager, but I'll get spun up, and I'll insist that, we didn't follow the process the right way, or that, something was supposed to be done and I asked for this, and, occasionally I'm wrong, right? Like, it happens. Something goes wrong, and I assume, dangerous word, I assume that somebody else fell down on the job, or I get ready and I point and I blame right away. And the reality is that first, as a manager, as the leader, right, I need to be pointing at myself. Something goes wrong, I'm the one to blame. Everything's my fault. So,
bingo. Did you hear that? No, that is a mentality.
Right. Right out of the gate, though, right? Like, that I need to take ownership of what's going on. So right out of the gate, I was wrong, right? The second step, though, which I find is the one that's the hardest, is then going to the person and admitting you were wrong. It is tough.
Why is that?
You're really having to face that guilt and face that shame. And, I wish I was braver sometimes. I almost find that it's easier to be brave in my work relationships than it is in my personal relationships. The longer it sits, right, the more shame there is and the more guilt there is. And the more that you worry that when you go to admit that you're wrong, that it's going to come off inauthentic, or that they're not going to take you seriously, or that you're not going to get the closure that you wanted out of that conversation. And so it's all of these things can motivate you to not then go and admit you were wrong or apologize or whatever it is the action you need to do to then take ownership for what you did, right? And you're very good about that, I find. I know that we've had a couple of difficult moments throughout our relationship, and you'll send a text message sometimes an hour after it happened saying, hey, I just want to make sure that we're okay, and I felt like I did this, and I want to make sure that we're, and that's so powerful that you have that discipline. And I know that it's hard because I know I haven't done it before. I have outstanding debts to be paid.
I think we all do. What I also know, to add to what you said, is when I apologize, I'm putting myself in a very vulnerable situation.
Very.
And I find that it's difficult at times for me to be vulnerable because of the story that I tell myself, that if I make myself vulnerable, she's going to see my underbelly and take advantage of that.
And I'll come off weak.
I'll come off weak, or they're going to pile on, or it's like that. And that's just a story that I tell myself, when in fact, what I've learned is the opposite is true, which is when I share and am able to show that vulnerability, like you said earlier, you get a ton of credibility.
Yeah.
You get a ton of grace from the other person. You get a ton of, you build credentials, and you increase the bank account when you're constantly depositing your good things into that bank account, which is being vulnerable is one of those things. As long as your bank account with a person stays greater than your withdrawals, because we're always going to have withdrawals,
right?
We're always going to do dumb shit. We are.
It does
in
happen.
Relationships. We're always going to. But as long as I'm making sure that my deposits are greater than my withdrawals, and apologizing and saying sorry and saying I'm wrong is just one of the many ways you can add deposits. I mean, obviously complimenting and encouraging, and there's so many other ways to add deposits to a relationship. I want to wrap up because I think this podcast for me is really about awareness. Awareness around, do I want to be right or do I want to be rich? Am I ever going to be perfect at it, Amanda? The answer is no. If I'm aware, okay, Kevin, okay, here's your desire to be right. Let it go. Oh gosh, here's your desire. The washing machine is still full with those clothes 2 days later. Okay, do I want to be right or do I want to be rich? Just the awareness and the letting go is my hope and my desire that people get out of this. Because I think there are, and I like to call it self-awareness radars that we have. And it's a radar to me that sits right here. And I'm pointing right to the center of my chest. We all have radars, and I call it a self-awareness radar. And it's, am I aware of what's going on inside of me? Am I aware of that I'm feeling shame right now? That I hurt somebody's feelings? Am I aware, am I ignoring those feelings? Because I'm ignoring them, it's probably ego taking over. Am I aware of what's going on inside of me is the first self-awareness radar. The second self-awareness radar is, am I aware of how other people are experiencing me? Am I aware of how I'm coming across to others? Because I feel this journey of life is really about awareness. And am I aware? Because we're going to continue to make mistakes and learn and make mistakes and learn.
I think we answered our question. Can you be right and rich? And I think the answer is yes. But being right means being rich.
Oh. Well said, Amanda. Well said. I just learned something. I just learned something new on this podcast. And as we say at the end of each podcast, it's all about learning. It's all about keep growing. It's all about making your future bigger than your past. So we'll wrap up with this, Amanda. Here's to a bigger future, team. Thanks very much.